welcome you watching NewsX with me, Devika Devan. For nearly 3 years, viewers, we have watched a massive, incredibly messy diplomatic war play out between India and Canada. It started with a shocking accusation from then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who stood up and told the world that the Indian government was behind the assassination of Hardeep Singh Nijjar in British Columbia. Well, tonight, that entire narrative has been completely turned on its head. A massive global law enforcement sweep called Operation Hardball was just unsealed by the US Department of Justice. And the actual evidence shows something completely different from what we were told. Hardeep Singh Nijjar wasn't killed by government spies. He was executed on the orders of international drug cartels and local gang leaders. Let's take a look now at who is actually being charged here. Federal prosecutors have indicted 37 people, and right at the top of the list is a man whose name should be very familiar to the people in India, Lawrence Bishnoi, the notorious gangster who has actually been running a multi-million-dollar criminal empire from a prison cell in India using smuggled phones. Alongside him is his top guy, North America Goldie Brar, who is currently a fugitive on the run. The US indictment says and also lays out how these guys were running hundreds of kilograms of cocaine and meth across the US-Canada border using long-haul semi-trucks and using that drug money to fund targeted hits and extort local businesses. The other names in the paperwork are guys like Ravinder Singh Dhanda, Jaskaran Bagri, Gurtej Singh Smag, who are all local handlers based right out of British Columbia, running the logistics on the ground. Now think about how this is a massive shift from 2023. Let's go back to September 18, 2023. Then Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau stood up in the House of Commons and ignited a diplomatic wildfire, claiming there was quote-unquote credible intelligence linking Indian state agents to the killing of Nijjar outside a Surrey Gurdwara. Back then, the accusations completely froze relations between New Delhi and Ottawa. Trade talks stopped dead. Canada expelled top Indian diplomats. We had leaked intelligence reports hitting the Western media, claiming without a shred of public evidence that India's Home Minister, imagine that's the extent of the accusations. They said India's Home Minister orchestrated the hit and hinted that India's Prime Minister knew about it. The US also stepped in, saying Five Eyes intelligence backed up Canada's claims. India was essentially branded a rogue state. I want you to listen in to what happened then versus what's happening now.
Over the past number of weeks, Canadian security agencies have been actively pursuing credible allegations of a potential link between agents of the government of India and the killing of a Canadian citizen, Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
Well, I can comment, David, as you're aware, there's current people in Canada that are facing charges on that, so I can't comment in relation to that investigation, but I can say, as you know, there's ongoing. In relation to this matter today, as stated in the press conference, there's no evidence to suggest that through this organized crime investigation and the charges and the indictment laid forward, that Indian officials were charged or were involved in this.
There is no evidence available that Indian officials could be involved. Imagine that's the state today. Viewers, India was essentially branded a rogue state by Justin Trudeau. But India's stance never changed. From day one, New Delhi said this is absolutely ridiculous. They maintain that Nijjar, who by the way is a designated Khalistani terrorist with an active bounty on his head in India, was killed because of a brutal local tough war over drug money and extortion. India did not just deny the accusations, we actively demanded a multi-country global crackdown on these exact syndicates. We warned Western capitals that giving safe haven to extremist elements under the guise of free speech would allow organized crime to fester. Because let's be honest about what was happening on the ground while Western governments looked the other way. Radical Khalistani groups were openly putting hit list posters right outside Canadian Gurdwaras. They're the faces of Indian diplomats on them, openly calling for their assassination while local police virtually did nothing. But the politics, viewers, as you've heard in that soundbite, has shifted drastically. With Trudeau now out of office, the new Canadian administration under Prime Minister Mark Carney has done a total 180. Facing intense economic pressure, Carney realizes that Canada cannot afford to alienate a global powerhouse like India. He has travelled to New Delhi earlier this year for a massive strategic reset. They've signed major trade deals, and crucially, Canada has finally admitted that Khalistani extremism is a major domestic security threat. So where does that leave things tonight? Well, the shoe now is on the other foot. Canadian and US officials are now explicitly stating that the Indian government has been actively cooperating in this investigation. Western agencies are now relying on India's help to take down the rest of these crime syndicates. New Delhi's response has been one of quite powerful vindication. India has reiterated its commitment to global security cooperation, but has sent a clear, unyielding message to Canada and the US. Transnational crime thrives when political opportunism protects extremists. The truth, viewers, is finally out. The evidence is unsealed, and the narrative against India has officially fallen apart. So where do we go from here? Before I bring in our guests, let's listen in to earlier in 2023 what US Ambassador David had spoken about the intelligence behind Trudeau's allegations over India and what the authorities say today. Listen in.
So I'm not. I wouldn't in any circumstance. I think I've already gone further than you should have expected that I'd be willing to go by confirming that there was shared intelligence among Five Eyes partners that helped lead Canada to making the statements that the Prime Minister made.
The charges set forth in the indictment include allegations that Lawrence Bishnoi and Goldie Brar directed the 2023 assassination of a prominent Sikh leader in Canada, identified by his initials HSN in the indictment. The gang used this assassination and other high-profile acts of violence to terrorize Sikh and other Indian communities, and they used acts of violence to legitimize and bolster widespread extortion schemes.
So there you've heard it, viewers. 3 years, and it seems that the entire evidence trail has completely changed. Surinder Singh Lali with us on the broadcast, Ambassador Sushil Singhal, and John Rosamondo also with us from Washington, D.C. Mr. Lali, like I said, sir, 3 years ago, Justin Trudeau was confident enough to stand in the Canadian Parliament and declare India a rogue state. The wildfire that he started had some serious repercussions for not just India-Canada relations, but also India's image abroad. How does evidence, sir, change in 3 years to where we stand today, where it's very clear from the current investigation that, in fact, no Indian official, government or otherwise, is involved?
Thank you, Devika. Devika, firstly, allow me to congratulate the entire team of NewsX, all the panelists. I'm going to pat my back for a change, including me, and the very nimble and deft Foreign Minister of India, who stood the ground. We knew that this is political harakiri by Justin Trudeau, who dug himself into such a deep hole by succumbing to the key elements for whatever ridiculous, short-term, narrow political decisions, maybe some funding or maybe for electoral politics. And it's very unfortunate that a relationship between two English-speaking fellow democracies, especially in such a fraught and polarized world, Devika, 3 million diaspora, 5% of the Canadian population, and it all suffered. While Justin Trudeau, he's well within his right to be expressing his public, his PDA, as my kids would say it, at Tribeca, walking the red carpet at the Tribeca and Music Festival. The future of so many students who are stuck in the middle and a relationship between two democracies suffered. So I think we knew what we wanted. We stood the ground, and I think it's for the entire world to see the writing on the wall. And maybe they did, because I also see there is more to what Justin Trudeau did on the 18th of September with that disastrous diplomatic crisis. It was the Five Eyes involved. I mean, maybe it was America who gave that bit of knowledge to the Five Eyes, only to maybe keep India, the growing India, on the back foot, so that they have more power, more negotiating tools against India for their negotiating power, because we've always, we've never wanted to become an ally. And the Western economies love allies because they simply want other people to toe the line so that they can attack any country without any congressional or UN sanctions, if you know what I mean. But we fell in no camp. We said we are only here to protect and stand for the truth and nothing but the entire truth and the growth of India. So Devika, I think there is full points to congratulate our foreign ministry, our honorable Prime Minister, who led from the front, and we as Indians stand vindicated all across the globe.
All right. Ambassador Sushil Singhal, bringing you into the conversation as well. Ambassador Singhal, I want to understand from your perspective. Like I mentioned earlier, we will now perhaps be expecting some extradition requests from the United States of America. How does then India go about this entire procedure? Because to be very fair, there are several people on US and Canadian soil that India would love extradited as well.
Well, thanks, Devika. The thing is, when it comes to the extradition, it has certain norms. Like, if there are Indian citizens involved, we do not extradite. They can be prosecuted in India. Same thing applies to US. And USA and Canada, you have to remember, there are many Indians who need to be extradited and they are not extradited on various grounds. Indians being extradited to US and Canada, I think it will take its own course because there are rules and regulations, that part. But, coming to this, what Prime Minister Trudeau did to the India-Canadian relationship, I think he should he should really think what he has done, because the kind of categorical statement he made at the time, claiming that his RCMP has the evidence and they have unearthed that Indian agents are involved, and he was not willing to share the evidence at any time, which clearly shows that it was what he was saying was politically motivated, and he has his own axe to grind. And remember that there's the same party. Now only the leaders have changed. The Mark Carney is totally different from what Justin Trudeau was alleging and claiming. And look at the statement which is coming. Now they are saying that Khalistan extremists are a threat to Canada. Earlier, he was in hand in gloves. And ultimately, they have to question themselves. Who encouraged these people? Who have harbored them? Ultimately, is this question which needs to be answered by them. And I think the same thing applies to US. That they also cannot take shelter behind this plea of freedom of speech. When we are declaring certain people to be terrorists, they expect that when they declare somebody a terrorist, then everybody in the world should take note of it. But other countries, when they declare, they allow them to work there and issue a statement the way they want and do acts which are not in favor of other friendly country. Still, they work there just in the name of freedom of speech. But that principle does not apply when their interests are affected. So I think they need to, this is an opportunity for everybody to look at themselves and see what they are doing. And because in the end, as the Prime Minister Modi says, the government of India says, that terrorism has no boundary. It comes to bite back. They have seen that what happened to Taliban when they are encouraged in Afghanistan. They have seen in Iraq. And so, the Khalistan thing, is not different because they are all linked ultimately. ISI and all, they are independent clubs. So they need to really think where they are going, because if they don't take note of it now, 5 years down the line, let me tell you, they will suffer from this. Thank you.
All right, let me bring in Mr. John Rosamondo as well. Mr. Rosamondo, I have to understand then from an American perspective, sir. What is a fair consequence of the sort of damage that India's image suffered thanks to a Justin Trudeau statement 3 years back? Yes, of course, today India's position and its stance stands vindicated, but there was considerable damage. In your assessment, what would be a fair now consequence of that damage?
Well, I don't see much. As far as from an American perspective, I mean, I don't think that it had much coverage in the American media. I don't think that there's really much of an impact on how India is viewed here in the U.S. In any circumstance. I know that the Biden administration was very much anti-India and was taking the Khalistani side, but I haven't seen much to indicate that even the Trump administration has been giving it much heed.
All right, that's perhaps then a fair assessment of what's happening in the United States of America. But Mr. Rosamondo, do you feel that currently, as things stand, the US would benefit from listening into India when we've sent several alerts to America and Canada about some of the people and the cartels that are operating out of their soil?
Well, if they're involved in criminal activities that threaten Indian lives or so forth, then I think they should be lodging extradition requests with the relevant Justice Department authorities in the United States.
Absolutely. Surinder Singh Lali, bringing you back into the conversation. Surinder Lali, like I said, for an investigation of this stature to completely turn on its head in 3 years, and it's not just that it's turned on its head in 3 years, it's also turned on its head after a different government and a different regime has come in, and we have to keep that in mind, right? That it seems that the truth has now come out now that the administration itself is different in Canada. It is no surprise here. There's no, it's not I'm not making this up. Justin Trudeau has been photographed with known Khalistanis and Khalistani supporters. He's known to hobnob with them. Was Hardeep Nijjar's murder then somewhere, Surinder Lali, used to target India? Was it used to create a narrative against India? And is that something that should be investigated?
Absolutely, you're so on it, because Devika, this is a part of the normal, playbook by the deep state in the West, which does look for reasons like this and then tries to keep a country on the back foot, because then they get a more elbow/negotiating room. I mean, let's look at the gentleman called Nijjar. He wasn't a Nobel laureate. The man tried to jump the border twice and then got into Canada under the name of Sharma. And I, as a Sikh, believe in absolute dignity of labor. But how many other plumbers has Justin Trudeau, stood and spoken when it came to the House of Commons? Obviously, this is what the so-called fringe rogue, who simply call themselves Sikhs, they use, all sort of, they're involved in all sorts of nefarious activities in Canada. They use Sikh religion, and through those nefarious activities, the money they make, then they fund, Canadian or American politicians. I mean, look at the role of APAC right now in the US. It's all over the place. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm so happy, even as a proud Indian Sikh, that they do not represent us. I mean, we are 87% of us live in India, while a few seeks to make noise and disrespect the Indian flag outside our consulates and paint a target at the back of our diplomats. I mean, I don't know what part of free speech of the First Amendment are we talking about. I mean, if you were to do that in India, imagine doing this to one of the most powerful politicians in the world. I mean, the whole, Marco Rubio would be sitting in the South Block and giving us lectures and telling us what to do. So this is, Devika, absolutely part of the deep state. And earlier you said about the role of RCMP and Peel Police. Is very unfortunate that this K lobby is also penetrated into, the American and the Canadian polity. I mean, look at the way China has been interfering in the Canadian elections. I mean, they virtually made, police stations, and they've been picking up Baloch activists and killing them. So Canada, I think, finally has to understand that with a bad relation with China and India, what are you going to do? What else in the world are you left with to be trading with? And especially when Donald Trump is breathing down their throat and wanting them to make the 51st state. So I think, karma, Devika, as they say, what goes around comes around. And I think now is the time that we knew what was going to happen, but now the entire world can see what's happened. Because you can't fool people so many times. And one last thing, Devika, I am still, as an Indian, looking for the closure for Air India where 329 innocent lives were gone. That was Trudeau Sr., who had enough knowledge. If I was to quote Ujjal Dosanjh, the ex-premier of British Columbia, he said he had enough intelligence that these Johnnies who call themselves Sikhs and tend to have these referendums. I mean, what referendums? 87% of us live in India, Sikhs. We don't need referendums. I mean, what is a referendum? But he had enough knowledge. He didn't pay heed to it. And we lost in Air India, 329 innocent lives, with 84 children were lost. And Devika, I'm still looking for a closure to that.
Absolutely. Ambassador Sushil Singhal, I'll leave the last word with you. So I want to understand from your perspective as well. Same question. Was Hardeep Nijjar's murder used to build a narrative against India by a man, like I said, Justin Trudeau, known to hobnob with the Khalistanis?
Oh, well, certainly, Devika, I completely agree with this, that, they jumped on an opportunity, and it was not only Canada, but, when they talk about the Five Eyes, he used that reference of Five Eyes, and that, there's some evidence which has come out, and previous US administration also supported that idea, but without sharing anything. That clearly shows that, the idea at that time was to somehow put India down and make it, sort of answerable for things which India has not done. I don't know what they want to achieve, apart from some narrow political gains, which I think that they stand completely exposed. And if they really want to clean their system, which I doubt even they are, be it American or be it Canadians. Of course, American media will not bother about it unless they have their own vested interests, because we all know how the media operates there. So there is no murmur of talk. I'm not surprised. It's normal out there. It is normal in the American media. They always try to paint a different picture as suit their narratives. But as far as the Canadian system is concerned, because now the present government seems to be honest enough to admit the facts, and they are no longer, I think, bounded by these K-laws, as Mr. Lali is using that word. So they need to, I think, go further down on that road and see how the previous Prime Minister could use a narrative which was totally false to spoil the relations to such an extent with India, with a friendly country like India, that they have to do now the damage control in such a manner. So I think they need to clean up their system and build enough, roadblocks, if I can use that term, to ensure that, no Prime Minister can, or no government can misuse this their position to create this kind of false narratives.
Right, absolutely. On that note, I thank all of us. Yes, Mr. Lali, 30 seconds.
The other partner in crime is Pakistan, the deep state of Pakistan, ISI. I have personally seen in Canada where these ISI and the Pakistani diplomats openly hobnob with the Khalistanis. So this Devika playbook started with Yahya Khan and General Zia when they opened the Sikh shrines only to hobnob and use Punjabi as a language so as to find these fringe roads. And this is part of the K2 narrative. And my last statement is that Hamid Gul was on record saying that the Khalistani force is part of the Pak Army division. Thank you, Devika.
Absolutely. On that note, I thank all of our guests for joining us on the broadcast. We step into a very short break.